Okay, so sometimes you hang out with people and these masters and stuff, and they tell stories and they talk about things. And to be honest with you, I learn more in those stories than I do almost on the mat sometimes. But this is probably one of the greatest stories that you've never heard, and it has to be told. It has to be repeated because it cannot be forgotten. Not only for the history of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but also just because it is one of the most badass stories ever. Guys, my name is Bill Jones. I'm head instructor of top-level martial arts in beautiful downtown Cuyahoga Falls. You're watching Professor's Corner. I'm a black belt under Master Pedro Sauer. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe. You know the whole deal. We've got to ask just so that we grow our channel or whatever. Otherwise, YouTube won't show it to anybody. And this is a story that people have to hear. All right, so Master Pedro Sauer, if you don't know who that is, Pedro Sauer is an 8th degree red and black belt or coral belt under Rickson Gracie and Helio Gracie. Helio Gracie actually signed the certificate for his 8th degree before he passed away. And, but most of his belts he got through Rickson Gracie. And Pedro's been training for a very, very, very long time. So he would come into the area and do seminars, and it's very hard to get a hold of the man. I mean, he's very busy, especially nowadays. He's got a life, he's got children, he travels a lot. So anytime he would come in, I would take the time to go out to breakfast with him, and it was always my favorite time. It's breakfast with Pedro. Like, I needed to know when and where my instructor Tony was taking Pedro so that we could go and sit down and just talk. And I just loved hearing his stories, and I still do. It's honestly one of my favorite things is to listen to Pedro's stories, because he's almost 60, or actually I think a little over 60 now, and has just lived an amazing life. He's very lucky, and Jiu-Jitsu has taken him places that most people will never see. And that's one of the beauties of Jiu-Jitsu. You'll be shocked. You stick with it, you'll be shocked at some of the things that happen, and the people you meet, and the things you see. I've met movie stars because of it. But that said, one day we're sitting there, and I forget how the subject comes up, but we're talking about Chuck Norris, and I can't remember. I think someone was saying, who would win, Chuck Norris or Bruce Lee? And I think it was one of those dumb things. And Pedro was sitting there at breakfast, and he goes, and completely, because we said Chuck Norris, it's related. He goes, "That's one of the most genuine guys you'll ever meet." And we're like, "Huh? Who?" And he's like, "Oh, Chuck Norris." I'm not going to do the accent. I normally do his accent when I talk. But he says, Chuck Norris is one of the most genuine people you ever meet. Because he's a super nice guy, and he likes him a lot. And then we're like, "Wow, you've met Chuck Norris? That's amazing." He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Chuck Norris is actually, his name is actually he's the one who signed for me to come to America." To which, everything stopped, right? There's me, and I think 3 other people at the table, and we're all like, "Wait, what? You're in America because of Chuck Norris?" And he goes, yeah. He goes, Chuck had brought in the whole Gracie family in '88 for a huge seminar, and decided to bring in some more people, and Pedro was one of them. And we're like, "Whoa, well, how'd you meet him and everything?" And this is where the story is just badass. And here's how the story goes. Now, of course, I'm telling it secondhand. Hopefully, one of you who trained with Pedro, or maybe you're at a seminar with Professor, and you can ask him yourself. But he said that he came in for class one day, and he looked around like always, and there was this guy wearing a white gi that had big black collars on it, and he had a big black belt and a big bushy beard, he didn't know who he was or anything like that. He just knew it was someone who was in class that was wearing a black belt. And the way he tells it is that Grandmaster Helio said, "Hey, see that guy over there? Go kick his ass." So Pedro takes him into the other room. There's 2 rooms at the academy there, and Pedro takes him in the other room, and they're rolling. And Pedro, it's just like anybody else who doesn't know jiu-jitsu, right? You roll, you take the guy down, you mount, you choke. And he said he did this a few times. He would take him down, he'd mount him, he'd choke him. And right there, I'm stopping the conversation. I'm like, "Professor, you're telling me you just kicked Chuck Norris's ass?" And he's like, "I wouldn't say it that way." And I go, No. You took him down, you mounted him, you choked him, you kicked his ass. And obviously it's a role. I'm not under any idea that it's a real fight or anything like that, but it's just a funny story because of all the the Chuck Norris jokes, right? so he said, yeah. He said, then Elio came in and said, come with me. And he took Chuck Norris aside. And then Pedro went back to training. And the next thing he knows, he's looking over. And there's Elio mounted on top of Chuck Norris, like slapping him in the face and stuff. Like just smacking him, beating him up. And that's the story of how Chuck Norris met Pedro Sauer. And over time they came to the States, and Chuck, through various reasons and coincidences, ended up training with the Machado brothers, that whole side of the family, and is, I believe at present, a 3rd degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But it's just an amazing story, and it's amazing. I think a lot of people don't know that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is in America because of Chuck Norris, because he went to the Gracie Academy while he was filming. He wanted to keep training. He's a real martial artist, meaning that he wasn't content just saying, yep, I'm a martial artist, and just wearing his black belt all the time. Like, he was a real martial artist who always wanted to keep learning, and heard that this Gracie Academy was the place to go in Brazil, so that's where he went, and was humble enough to realize that these guys had something special and wanted to bring it back to the States and share it. And that's what led Rorion to coming over and starting the UFC. Got him into show business. Rorion ended up doing stunt coordination for like Lethal Weapon after that. And before that, like, none of this was going on, right? Like, Rorion had come to the States, but I don't think it was going to end up the way, that way anyway. And the UFC probably wouldn't have happened. So I think it's important that we respect not only the people who directly created these things, the Gracie family, the Fada lineage, all these people who have been bringing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu over, but the people who started it and had the foresight to see it. So Chuck Norris was a big part of that, and that's something that most people don't know. So, next time you see a Chuck Norris joke or meme, make sure to put in there that Chuck Norris can probably choke you out. Talk to you later, guys. Have a good one.